Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to do power rankings heading into Thanksgiving week. It's been a very interesting
We
process as we
apologize to
rank
some
these
of you
teams.
teams for having to do power rankings because you're not going to like where you're at. But,
Right.
yeah.
Some fan bases would like to power rank themselves out of college basketball for a week or two entirely, probably. But we're here to break it all down, and we start with our reminder that this is sponsored by BetOnline. The holiday season is off and rolling with NFL in full stride, NBA and NHL hitting midseason form. BetOnline is your number one destination for all your sports wagering info. With up-to-the-minute sports wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions, BetOnline is the top spot for everything pro and amateur when it comes to sports. And it's not just the big four. BetOnline has info available at your fingertips with both desktop and mobile access at any time for almost any sport that is played, from MMA to international soccer. Head to BetOnline today. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that is BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, power rankings. We always start at the bottom with power rankings. Who we got at 14, Blake?
As a reminder, these are our staff composite rankings. These are not just any of our individual rankings. And these were the bottom 5 teams here were quite an interesting bunch to figure out. And as we'll talk about, pretty much all of us had these teams ranked in different areas. Not the same for the middle and some places at the top, but the bottom, we were all over the place on our rankings here. So
I love it when you do that, because what you really mean is don't come yelling at me on Twitter for the stuff
listen,
my
if
partners have
you are
done.
one of these bottom 5 fan bases and you're coming and yelling at anybody, sorry, I don't mean bottom 5 fan bases, of the teams that are ranked in the bottom 5, then we have flaws we can point out for these teams.
We're stepping in it. We haven't even rated a team yet.
We got flaws we can point out for teams that are higher than 10. But for right now, these are the 5 I think that we were all pretty clear in our thinking that these are the bottom 5 teams in the SEC right this second. But we're only a couple weeks into the season. So here we go. All that delaying to tell you that Ole Miss is the team that winds up at 14. Now, I'm going to let Chris, stand up for Ole Miss here because he was the high man on them. And I'm just here to tell you that I could certainly argue against Ole Miss being 14 when they are undefeated at this point at 4-0. But if you watch the games and you see how teams play, I don't think it's that big of a stretch to think that they are the team that's furthest behind right now. But they have won all their games. And Chris, there are some teams that have not won all their games against teams that they should have beaten. So if Ole Miss fans are upset, I can understand that because there's some validity to it, I believe.
Well, you know how I like my stats. I've compiled a points above average for 4 ranking systems. Like Ole Miss is actually 12th in the SEC in that, ahead of 2 teams we will discuss. Hey, buddy, they beat Eastern Washington and Sam Houston State. That's more than a team or 2 in this league can say.
That's
so
what
far.
I said. You're right. Yes. And so I think them being at 14 is debatable. Like I'm not sure they should be there, but this is where they wound up in terms of staff of the polls for all of our staff. This is where they wound up. So
I did watch a good bit of that Sam Houston game the other night, and they didn't look great. I still like some of their parts. Is the ceiling for this team super high? No. Can you justify moving up? Yes, and I did, but that's where we are. I think I'm interested to see what Chris Beard does with this team. I think they're going to get better. They're going to play hard. I think they're going to lean on Alan Flanagan, who's going to deliver him some wins. But I'm interested to see what they do going forward, Blake.
I think they're too low, but we'll see if that turns out to be the case. All right, number 13.
Vandy, and I think the question is, which Vandy are we ranking? Because I think if we rank the team with Tyron Lawrence and Allen Lubin, they probably rank higher. Probably.
Well, we can't rank that team
maybe
because we haven't seen that team.
Yes, we haven't seen that team, and buddy, the team we have seen. Let me just give you the highlight for Vanderbilt, and this looks better than it did a week ago. Vanderbilt beat UNC Greensboro 98 in Ken Palm.
Who
but
beat Arkansas.
My goodness, who beat Arkansas, as we'll get to, but came that close to losing to Central Arkansas and did lose to Presbyterian, which is, by the way, for whatever it's worth, out of the 300s in Ken Palm now. They're a robust 279 today. But this is the territory we're in with some of these teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could justify a swap of Ole Miss and Vandy, although not saying it should be that case right now, but I can understand, which if I look at some of our individual rankings here right now, some of us did have it that way, but hey, it is what it is. So, all right, number 12 is Georgia. This was another one, like from the point system standpoint, there was a little bit of a gap between Georgia and Vanderbilt and Ole Miss, but not much. Because Georgia, here's the reason. I think, let me look at where I had Georgia. I think I actually had them a little higher. I think I was the high man on Georgia. It's because, hey, they got a win over Wake Forest. And I mean, that's not a lot.
It's more than a lot of teams have.
Well, yeah. And it's just, I mean, they got a power conference win so far. And I know Wake Forest just lost LSU, but again, I've seen some good with Georgia. They've been right there in a lot of these games. And so I know they're 2-3, but you rank a team on strength if that's what we're doing, and we probably all have our own individual criteria in terms of what we value most. And Georgia a little bit higher, but they're here at 12.
Yeah, Georgia 0-3 against the Ken Palm top 50, 2-0 against teams outside.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, there you go. All right. Number 11, the Missouri Tigers, who were not that far away from being ranked lower than Georgia. 1 point separated them when we compiled all the individual staff rankings. So could have very well been 12. And I'm actually looking at it here now. Yeah, a couple people had Missouri lower, but the person who brought Missouri up to the number 11 ranking, the high man himself, it's not me, it's Chris. Chris is the person who ranked Missouri the highest this week, and that helped him move up to 11. If you didn't watch our reaction video for the Sunday games, we talked a lot about Missouri in there, and as I said, they're not there yet. That Jackson State loss, disappointing, inexcusable in some ways, but it is a team that's still trying to figure it out. And yeah, this is where they are right now. They are, probably this team that is kind of where they should be in the rankings, just because they have not looked great in most instances so far.
The points above average model I'm putting together has got Missouri 10th in this, which I don't go by solely that.
I'll vouch for that.
Just point of information there. Not real thrilled with what Missouri did Sunday, although did win at Minnesota for whatever that was worth right before.
Very little consistency so far, and we talked a lot about their offensive.
How do you rank these teams? How do you rank these teams?
Well, look, I mean, let me just tell you, there's nothing more pointless than a 5-game in SEC basketball power ranking. But guess what? We're giving you great content here. So these do not matter right now. We do these for fun. As I always say, these are just supposed to be fun to do, but these were not fun to do because you're really trying to figure out how to rank these teams. But somehow, some way, LSU, who we thought was going to be 14th, if they were they last week? I don't remember.
I think they were, and I think we've ranked them too high today. But
I mean, you say that, but really, you say that, but look at the 4 teams below them. What have they done to warrant being above LSU?
That's fair, and I think that's how they got here. Look, 2 top 100 Ken Palm wins: North Texas, Wake Forest, and lost to Dayton, which is 60 in Ken Palm by that much. So there was the Nicholls State loss too, which was ugly and deservedly got LSU penalized. But that's where we settled. Look, I don't think anybody 10 to 14 right now is feeling outstanding about the state of things. But LSU did give itself a little boost to feel better last week, and that was reflected in our rankings.
Yeah, I think it's like the way I look at this is like, if you play on a neutral floor right now, which team do you have more confidence in? It's hard to believe I would put LSU this high, but it is true that they just won 2 neutral court games against North Texas and Wake Forest. Even though they lost the one against Dayton, which I don't think Dayton's a bad team at all. They beat St. John's, came up short against Houston, but so does pretty much everyone else. And yeah, so I mean, yeah, the Nicholls game, I get it, but hey, you're ranking teams that have bad losses through here, which again, maybe Ole Miss fans are like, what are we doing down here in this spot when some of these other teams got bad losses? But I still doing this based on strength, and strength-wise, maybe we'll give a slight nod to LSU over some of these other teams. Again, these are the 5 I think that they got a lot to still work on. But I'm curious to think how other people would rank the bottom 5, which I know there could be some bias involved, but just saying. All right, this is where we take a step up. And little did we know when we say that the South Carolina Gamecocks were going to represent this next tier of teams, because even right now at 5-0 and at number 9 in our composite rankings, I'm telling you, Chris, I think that could be low. I really do think that it's probably a combination of we started them at 14, and the fact is maybe they've just not jumped up enough. But I am telling you right now, if you look at South Carolina, the team we're going to talk about next after them on a neutral floor right now, I don't know, man. It's wild to think that those two could be a kind of coin flip type game, but South Carolina has done some things that make me think it could be. And we'll talk about that team in a second. But the Gamecocks, unbeaten and sitting at number 9 in our rankings, and could be higher, in my opinion.
Were we unanimous on Carolina at 9?
Yes, that's what I was going to say. We were unanimous on 7 through 9. So everyone had the same 7 through 9, which is wild because I would not have thought that. But we did, and South Carolina was 9.
Well, there were about 2 teams that I had no trouble ranking, and Carolina was one of them. The first of the 2. The second one is way ahead in the countdown. And the reason I did, I think that Carolina has clearly, well, to me, separated itself from the teams below it. But I think you still got to take under consideration the 8 teams in front of Carolina, which were all pretty much unanimous preseason NCAA tournament picks. Have all of them had their proudest moments? No. Can I move Carolina ahead of any of them yet? Also no.
I can see that. I just look. I try to hype up teams here. I try not to be the downer on teams. So yeah, I'm trying to get everybody.
You've got to pick a new battle now that your man went down in flames yesterday.
Again, it's game 5. Let's all calm down. Speaking of finding the bright spots, the team I was talking about is number 8, Arkansas, which I'm curious to see what the Hogs, the fans, thinks of this, because
speaking of calm down,
I know. Look, these are our established basketball fan bases. We established it. Our first 2, breakout fan bases were Arkansas and Missouri. And I hate that they're both, sitting here kind of dealing with some similar issues thus far and losing games they shouldn't lose. Although, like we said, I think the Missouri one's a little bit bigger than the UNC Greensboro one. But Arkansas's at 8. And like I said, we all were unanimous in putting them at 8. And so, wild to think that that's what it is. But, we mentioned even in some of those games they won, you could see some things that were frustrating Eric Musselman, and it comes back to kind of bite them in that game against Greensboro. And now they set up for Atlantis, where they're going to have at least 2 very difficult games. Probably they got the Duke home game coming up next Wednesday, so Hogs got to figure it out fast, and they don't have the greatest schedule to try to do that, but here they are.
When we did our preseason power rankings, I don't remember if I clarified this, but my thinking was I would not pick Arkansas as high in the SEC as I would pick them at the end of the season, because Eric Musselman's teams always do this. Now, I did not think they would be this underwhelming in November, but the history with those teams is they get better. They start hitting their stride maybe mid to late January, and then they take off from there. But there have been some rough spots in between. I did not see a loss to UNC Greensboro being part of that. I thought they were too talented, but the Hogs right now have played one team inside the Ken Pop Top 100. That is UNC Greensboro, which is quite honestly there because the way it played against Arkansas, and the Hogs are 0-1 in those games. So,
yeah, it's all right. Nice bus pulling over, getting some. Remember the unleaded to start with. Now we're going on to the premium. That's how we keep this bus rolling. So we'll see what happens. All right. As we said, unanimous 7 through 9. It was Florida, Arkansas, South Carolina in that order. The Gators just dominated Florida State. I think we're seeing they're going to be a different team with Zion Pullen because it gives them that extra guard. They would have beat Virginia if they had him. We can play what ifs, but I'm just telling you they would have. And so, yeah, I think this is a team that my guess is there's a real possibility we look back in about a month and say that Florida at 7 was kind of laughable, just because I think they have got high upside based on what I've seen so far. And wouldn't surprise me at all if we're talking about them in a month from now and they're just rolling through teams and moving up quite a bit maybe in our rankings.
Florida's my preseason sleeper team in the league, and they beat the absolute tar out of Florida State. If you didn't see that or check the box score, Florida was up 30 at half in that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's what they did. And so they're really good. I think, again, their upside is a bit higher than maybe we would have thought entering the season. We won't talk about sleeper teams. I'm going to tell you who mine was. But all right. Number 6. This is where, again, we had some debate. I think we all had number 1 the same, but we all had different orders 2 through 6. Number 6 winds up being Auburn. And I'm trying to see who the high man was on Auburn. I think, yeah, a couple of us were higher. I was higher on Auburn than this ranking. But still, I mean, I think this is where you're starting to see, really at Florida, I think these are the teams that I think are separated themselves. Although South Carolina fans could argue maybe they have to this point. But these top 7, they're pretty good. So I think Auburn.
And I think the top 8 are, to be fair to Arkansas. They just
agreed.
hasn't looked good lately.
Yeah. I think Arkansas, I'd be surprised, like you said, if Arkansas is number 8 in our rankings 2 months from now. I just don't see it happening. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see if that happens. But Auburn, again, felt like a missed opportunity against Baylor. Thinking back, certainly had their plays to win that game. Dominated Notre Dame. St. Bonaventure win by 17. So, yeah, right back on track for the Tigers.
Yeah, I mean, played one good team, lost that one, could have easily won it, but they didn't. And yeah. I think if they had, we'd have all had Auburn higher. But
yep, Mississippi State's 5. I can't say I'm surprised by that because I'm pretty sure. Looking through the rankings, yeah. Although I will say, high man on Mississippi State was Max. Max had him at 3, so that did push them up a little bit here, and I wouldn't argue against that based on everything we talked about, how good they've looked without Toulouse Smith. One of the best defensive teams in the country. Offense is putting it together now. That's a dangerous combination against this team, knowing what you're going to get defensively. So, yeah, got a good upcoming schedule, in my opinion. I mean, that I don't want to get ahead of myself here, Chris, because, look, we've seen what happens to teams in the SEC, losing games they shouldn't so far. But I'm looking at Mississippi State's non-conference schedule the rest of the way. Got a long way to go. But I'm telling you right now, don't be stunned if they get out of there unscathed the way they're playing right now. I think they are the favorite in all those games. I probably just put the jinx on them, but just telling you it's possible.
I haven't fact-checked this, but is Mississippi State the only team in the league with 3 top 100 KenPom wins so far? I think it is. I don't think anybody's got more.
I would assume that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because, I mean, right, by the way, we're recording this just as Tennessee's about to tip off against Syracuse. And so I just want to keep that as a caveat for people when we get up the rankings a little bit here. But, yeah, I mean, Tennessee's only played 3 games, so they wouldn't. Yeah, I think you're right on that. So
here's the other thing, looking at KenPom page, the top usage guy is Josh Hubbard so far, and none of us would have had that preseason. Yeah. He scored 29 his last time out. Look out for those guys, because we said if they get shooting, and if they get Toulouse Smith, they're pretty dangerous. You expect the Chris Jans club to defend, but if they can shoot a little bit, which they have so far, then ceiling's higher for this team than any of us would have anticipated. Because frankly, I'm not going to say I wrote them off without Toulouse Smith, but I had some questions about them offensively, and then he was gone. I was like, oh boy. Yeah. But that is not what we have gotten.
It is not. All right, A&M at 4. I know you're still the high man on A&M, which I don't. I mean, I think we've all got them about where we had them to start the season. And well, actually, I was looking now. I was like, okay, so A&M has 2 top 100 wins in KenPom. They beat SMU and Ohio State. But I mean, I feel like A&M's just doing what they do. Like, They're not like blowing some of these teams out, but they're just finding ways to win. And they got an interesting stretch run of the schedule. We talked about that. Much tougher non-conference this year. Penn State coming up next. I can't remember who they play after that, depending on what happens. Well, I assume they're part of it's a tournament, right? With Penn State, like starting there. So, yeah, that's the one in Florida. So they'll play someone after that. I guess. Okay. I don't know if it's 2 or 3 games, but they got to go to Virginia, Memphis, Houston, all those still on the schedule. So, yeah. So I like the fact that they've loaded up the schedule, but already winning close games, and I don't have a lot to add on A&M. Like, they've just been doing what they do, and they just keep winning. So,
They've given up 66 points 3 games in a row.
There's your factoid of the day.
That was very useful, wasn't it?
Will they allow more than 66 points in a game the rest of the season? My guess is no. But
well, in all seriousness, I had A&M as my preseason #1 team. Now, I qualified that with I didn't know what Tennessee was going to get out of Ziegler. I had questions. I would have flipped it, but I still A&M would have been 2 preseason for me under that scenario. I can't. They've done nothing to really drop down any further from 2 in my mind. Although there's a couple teams pushing them, but I'm not ready to move A&M down from where I had them yet. But you guys obviously were.
I don't think I may have moved him down.
I just threw you under the bus, didn't I?
I may have moved him down a spot. I didn't. Yeah, I did. I had him at 4. So I wind up being the person who
at the Blake Lovell. Is that it on Twitter?
The composite winds up being what I ranked them, but you had them higher. Other people had them lower. So I was right there on the range here. Now let's talk about a team that for some reason, some of you people on the staff continue to underrate, in my opinion. But I said I was purposely moving them up because they deserve it at this point, and it's time for everyone to jump on board here. Number 3 is Alabama, and I was the high man on Alabama. I had Alabama 2nd. I put them at 2 this week because I think, we can talk all we want about the defensive stuff and all that, but guess what? They just beat South Alabama by 56 points. They only gave up 46 in that game. They beat Mercer by 31. You can tell me that and played a Ken Palm top 100 team, all of this stuff you want to tell me. But all I know is they've scored 98 points in every game they played this season. They are running people out of the gym. I don't care if they give up 100. They're going to score 101. Now, I say all that. Play Ohio State on Friday. Watch them, have a disappointing performance. I'm trying to stay optimistic here, but some of these SEC losses are they're starting to get to me here now. But they've got a tough stretch coming up. Like I said, Ohio State Friday, again, I can't remember if that's part of another game. They got Clemson, who looks really good right now. They got the game against Purdue. They got to go to Creighton. They got Arizona. Liberty's still on there, which we know is really good. So the schedule starts to get tougher here, but it's time for everyone to jump on board, Alabama, because the Tide are rolling. I had them at 2, but that's okay with everybody else slacking on the Tide right now.
Look, they're number 6 nationally in Ken Palm, which is number 1 in the league. The other computers have them very close to 1. They have them almost inseparable with Tennessee. I just need to see them play somebody inside the Ken Palm top 100 before I jump in with both feet.
Indiana State's 103.
Is there a huge bunch of opportunities
between a 99 and 103? Come on, please. Let's not get ourselves here. Come on. There's not a huge difference. Don't give me the Ken Palm 100 stat. They played 103. Come on. Hold on a second. Who is the 99th ranked team in Ken Palm? And you're telling me that if they would have beat them instead of Indiana State, you'd have been all in on Alabama. Wichita State. All right. I may give you a little bit on that. Greensboro.
Did I tell a lie there? Did I tell a lie there?
Oklahoma State is 1-3. Yeah. Well, I don't know. So you're telling me if they'd have beat Kent State, Loyola Marymount. Okay. I'm just kidding.
Alabama. I like how you elevate teams on just beat downs of teams that they're supposed to beat down. I think
yes, you absolutely do. I say this all the time. I don't think people understand this enough. Like, you can absolutely get more value at times out of watching teams beat teams unmercifully the way they should beat them, rather than let them hang around. I think there is 100% something to that.
Well, that's true of the bottom part of the league for sure, but
no, it is. It's 100% true. I'm telling you, like, not for everyone. This is my personal preference, but if you beat a team the way you should beat a team and or worse, I get more out of that than watching a team beat somebody 65-64 that they should have beaten by 15. That tells me way more about a team than you just sit there and let somebody hang around.
So what you're saying is you get more out of Alabama just beating the living crap out of South Alabama than you do A&M going to Ohio State and winning.
That's not what I'm saying.
I think that's what you said.
That's not what I'm saying.
That's what I heard.
That's not what I'm saying. It's because otherwise, if you let teams hang around and you don't come out and kind of establish yourself doing that kind of stuff, then you get an Arkansas who we did kind of looked at it and said, didn't look the greatest in that game against Old Dominion at times. Not a bad team, but you want to see a little more separation there. And then it comes back to bite you in the next game. Missouri the same way. So, look, I'm playing around.
I'm fine with separating teams in the bottom half based on did you beat the tar out of somebody that you could beat the tar out of. When I get to the top half, I get a little pickier.
Who else in the SEC has scored 98 or more points and or has a 56-point win to their credit? I'll sit back and wait.
Okay.
No one else in the SEC has done that. It's funny because
that's what you're going to put all your chips in on, and that is your right as an American. I cannot take
absolutely
that away.
am. 4 games into the season, you're 100% right. 4 games into the season, I'm all in on this methodology. Now it'll change.
I cannot wait to bank this and use it against you later.
It's funny because I think people were saying how much of discounting Alabama not long ago, but Alabama fans, you're back in my opinion. You're defending champion. All right, number 2 is Kentucky. We've all said Kentucky's looked really good. Well, they lost a game to Kansas, but remember too, we still haven't seen Kentucky's full team yet. Once you get the big guys back, I mean, they're going to be tough. Reed Shepherd, they're shooting the ball, all those things.
Okay, now this is where I'm going to be a little hypocritical because I've watched Kentucky, I think, and I didn't see the Stonehenge, whoever.
Well, clearly you saw the Stonehill game, Chris, because Kentucky came out and beat Stonehill by 34, who's the 352nd ranked team in KenPom. That has to mean something. So, I mean,
they're
a lot of value
18-inch Stonehill. So,
well,
I watched the Kansas game. Most of it, I loved what I saw. I know it went bad lately. I know why it went bad late in that game. I guess I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. I loved what I saw when I watched a lot of those New Mexico State and Commerce games, just after just picking you apart on you doing the same for Alabama.
So
it's
a shame, really, that it all comes back.
I watched them. I like the pieces. I think they can defend. I think they can offend. I think they are missing some key guys. I think they've got serious talent. I will ride with Kentucky at 2.
I will also tell you that I'd be just fine putting Kentucky at 2 as well. So all that argument to tell you that, I think Kentucky at 2 is completely worth the price of admission. I would pay that. So,
the question I have is what is a Stonehill? Do we know?
I think it's an old wooden ship, but
made of stone.
Made of stone.
Sank quickly against Kentucky.
Well, I don't know, but Kentucky does look good. Just like you said, we can only judge what we've seen so far, but if they get their full team back soon enough, look out. All right, now again, we're recording this, and I hope this isn't like ironic that we are getting to the number 1 team just as they are tipping off this game. So if Tennessee loses to Syracuse, can we put this? Okay, let's do this real quick. If Tennessee loses to Syracuse, where do we put Tennessee? Where would you move them to? Because clearly Alabama would be number 1 in the case that Tennessee loses.
I mean, 5 maybe, but they're not going to lose to Syracuse.
You can't say that, Chris. You cannot say that. And let's publish this. Oh my gosh, this is
You've mentioned it like 8 times before we went live that you were scared to death that Tennessee was going to lose to Syracuse.
Look, this is the pessimistic SEC basketball guy in me now coming out after seeing the way some of these games have gone.
Pessimistic? You just crown Alabama the national champion based on beating 200-ish KenPom teams.
Alabama is the defending SEC champion, the SEC tournament champion, the defending top overall seed in the NCAA tournament. So let's calm down here. All right. I'm just saying, if Tennessee were to lose this game, where would we put them? Yeah, I think you're about right. We'd slide them down a couple spots.
If Tennessee loses this game, we may have to do an emergency video.
We're not doing that.
And strike all the nice things. But they're not losing to Syracuse.
Boy, you're going to have a lot of Syracuse fans in this video if that happens. But
that's true.
Anyways, Tennessee at 1. Nothing changes here. I mean, there's not a lot to go into. We've said Tennessee's been at 1 since we started the season. We talked a lot about them in other videos. And, I mean, they're to this point, prior to this game being played, that we don't know the outcome as we're recording, they've been the best team in the league, in my opinion.
That was fun.
Unanimous at number 1 in all of our rankings. So we'll see what happens. All right.
A lot of basketball we've played this week.
Yeah, a lot of big games. This is the week where next week's power rankings, I think you start to see some separation in certain spots. like we said, we were all unanimous at Tennessee at 1, all unanimous 7 through 9. Everywhere else, there were differences. So maybe we see a few more common threads next week in terms of us all being on the same page, but we'll see.
Got plenty of football content coming, got plenty of hoops content coming. Best way to catch a lot, hit the subscribe button, enable your notifications. He is Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. We are Southeastern 14, presented by Bet Online, and thanks for watching.